Hi folks, you were Tacitus today, you were Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about, for those of you who don't know, one of the most prominent politicians in Britain who's against or is calling into question many of the central core policies of globalisation. Therefore, he's by extension, one of the biggest opponents to globalisation and a prominent politician in Britain. He's just recently been denied banking services by all the banks of Britain. They've all colluded, as I understand it, they've all colluded to say, no, we're not going to allow you banking services. Now, when you cut off more banking services, it can add layers of complication to your life. And Nigel Farage, the politician in question in Britain, is no exception to that. So Mr. Farage will need to either leave the country or find some sort of alternative arrangement in a foreign bank. Now, given that Mr. Farage is against the EU and against globalisation, or many facets of it, then it's unlikely he's going to have an easy job, I would think, given how closely the banks have cooperated to deny him service. I think he's going to have or is likely to have a very difficult time finding an alternative bank. I mean, I don't think it's impossible, but it may mean he needs to set up his financial affairs in another country, which would seem to be where it's heading. I don't know. Now, this is an absolute and utter outrage that the government and all the law enforcement authorities, all the supposed human rights organisations just stand by and they don't give a flying fuck about this outrageous treatment of a British citizen. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I don't think I've seen any prominent politicians getting up and talking with outrage. We're going to set up a special commission of inquiry. We're appointing a special investigator. I don't think I've seen any of that. But if a nondescript working class black youth is killed while in commission of some crime, then suddenly it's commissions of inquiry. I will not tolerate Hitler-like racism. Rah! Suddenly everything explodes. But in this case, everyone's very quiet about it, whereas the greater outrage by far, and by implication extension, the sort of precedent it creates, the greater outrage is what's happening to Mr. Farage. But is this a new thing? Is this something that's just happened that only appeared yesterday? Well, in fact, no, we only need to look at divorce law all across the Western world to see that people who are supposed to be paying, by ideological, extra legal decree through a very ideological court system, have to pay, child support or alimony, those sorts of things that can itself be arbitrarily determined and declared. These people are also denied banking services. So they become non-citizens, in that sense at least, financial non-citizens. And it makes the various aspects of their life very complicated. So let's have a look at that, because this has been around for a while. Now, again, once we go into divorce law, we're talking about something that's been totally and completely captured by ideological fanatics with the full support and consent of governments. And it's very much part of the globalist project to destabilize and reshape Western society. And they used the United States as the sort of the springboard for this in the late 1960s. And all the prominent activists who are involved in it in the United States in the 1960s were Jewish women and many of them lesbians. So they formed a nucleus, and a very sizable nucleus at that. And they were all very Marxist. The Schulmith Firesteins and Betty Friedan and Ellen Levine and Eisenstein and so on. But they were all, and another one, Miller, I can't think of a first name off the top of my head, but they were all very committed to destruction of the family unit, and were generously helped, aided and abetted and assisted by the globalists and so on. And, interesting, Ronald Reagan, for supposedly being the man who ended communism, he's the guy who signed the first, in the modern interpretation of divorce law, he's who signed the first North American version of this into law when he was governor of California. Now, whether he did so wittingly or he was surrounded by globalist activist plants in his advisory bodies and committees, but why somebody would sign off on such an arbitrary set of laws is quite beyond me. But anyway, it happened. And this was in, again, the late 1960s. So now these laws have been around for a while. But let me talk about how they denied banking services. I'll give you a few examples. So Shaniqua, goes into the government welfare office and says, "Look, I need welfare payments for me and a child." So now the government said, "Well, we're not going to give you any money for the child until you tell us who the biological father is." Well, I don't know who it is. Well, who do you think it might be? Oh, I think it's Billy Bob from Baltimore. And so they'll do a search on, the government office will do a search on Billy Bobs in Baltimore, and they'll come up with 10 Billy Bobs, and about how old would he? Okay, then they'll bring it down to say 3 Billy Bobs, 4 Billy Bobs, something like that. And she's still saying, "Well, I don't really know. Like, I only knew the guy for a couple of days. I mean, wow, So then they'll kind of say, okay, well, there's only one Billy Bob that's got a steady job, or who's got a good income or something like that. So do you think it could be him? If you say it's him, and you only have to say it, this is the burden of proof. If you say it's this Billy Bob who's got the good job and the regular income, if you say it's him, then you'll get $1,000 a month tax-free paid to you from him. So we'll just take his money and give it to you." And so, Shaniqua looks a bit wide-eyed. Don't I have to do anything? No, you don't do anything. You just have to sign that form there. You just sign it. I'll fill it out for you, sign it, and say that Billy Bob is the one. And we'll do the rest. You don't have to do anything. You just need to, all you're going to do is collect the tax-free money. But if you say it's any of the other Billy Bobs, they're all unemployed. They've all got, they're casual labourers occasionally, or this one hasn't had a job for 25 million years, and so on. So if you say it's these other Billy Bobs, you'll get nothing. But if you say it's that Billy Bob, $1,000 a month cash in your hand, no questions asked. Holy fuck! Well, it's definitely that Billy Bob. We'll sign here then. Now they've got, Billy Bob may have moved address a number of times, so they'll send a letter, claim they'll send a letter to an address that Billy Bob might have lived at last year or 5 years ago. They don't have to prove they sent that letter, by the way. They just have to say they sent it. So they sent that letter. Now, unless that letter comes back saying Billy Bob no longer lives at this address, and it's a block of apartments, so who bothers picking up mail like that and sending it back? Nobody bothers with that. So the chances of it coming back are close to zero. But nonetheless, they claim they send the letter out. Now, Billy Bob's got 30 days to question it or deny it or whatever. If Billy Bob doesn't do it in the 30 days, then it automatically escalates to he is now in debt for, and the kid's like 5 years old or something, he's now in debt for $50,000. And the government now has the right, the arbitrary right, without Billy Bob's knowledge or consent, because they've sent him the letter. Billy Bob didn't respond. If Billy Bob didn't respond, that means he's a fucking Nazi. He wants that little girl dressed in pink to starve on the street. That makes him fucking Hitler. He has no legal rights. Let's get the fuck into him and take his money. So they go after Billy Bob, and they suddenly, very magically, they couldn't find him in order to determine whether he was involved in the paternity. But when they want to get money, suddenly they are very efficient at finding Billy Bob, and they can issue him with legal orders and all sorts of things. But they've got the arbitrary right now to raid his bank account. He hasn't paid his fucking alimony or child support. He is now Hitler. He has no legal rights. We can do what we want to him. So they'll go to his bank and say, we want anything that's in his bank, and they'll send a circular out to every bank saying, well, we want any money, put the name of Billy Bob at 99 Smith Street, Baltimore. So they'll take that money, and then the bank will charge Billy Bob quite a substantial fee because his bank account's been cleaned out. Now the deal is, if your account goes to zero, the bank can charge you money. So there's a fee that they charge the alimony people to hand the money over, but then they back charge that fee to Billy Bob. So Billy Bob now has not only got a fee for having a zero balance as an account because they gave all the money to the alimony people, but he's now got two more fees. He's got to pay the fee that the alimony people should have paid, which puts his account into arrears. And then he's got to pay the zero in his account fee, and then they fine him on top of that. So Billy Bob, not only his account being cleaned out, but he could be in debt now for $500 to the bank that they just arbitrarily imposed that in what's a scam and a half. So Billy Bob doesn't pay it because why should he, for goodness sake? So his bank closes his account. Now, the circular, of course, that Billy Bob's behind in his account, supposedly in his payments, goes around to all the other banks. They will then refuse Billy Bob banking services. And then if he's got a credit card or something like that, either the loan will be called in or the credit card will be cancelled and so on. So effectively, Billy Bob's been denied banking services. Now, let's suppose that he wasn't completely denied banking services, that he got conditional banking services. For example, he's got a job and that business has a relationship with a bank where they pay their salaries to their staff through that particular bank, for example. Now, they can't. It's very difficult for the bank to just deny a private company, just, hey, we're not going to give you banking services. So through that, it still may be possible for Billy Bob to have an account with very limited, functionalities, just a place to deposit money but the government can now say, well, Billy Bob's in arrears, or has been in arrears, therefore he is Hitler, therefore he has no legal rights, therefore we can do what we want. So as soon as any money appears in this bank account from his employer, like paying his wages, we can take that as well. And Billy Bob has no say in this. If he wants to take it to court, which is his option, he could be 2 or 3, even 4 years on a waiting list. Meanwhile, they're taking all his money. Even if at the end of 4 years he proves, for example, he's got no paternity in relation to this woman, then he's not going to get any of that money back. It's now taken from him. So again, he can't use either the banking services are denied him or they're effectively inoperable for allowing him to live his life. Now, if he say he's got a mortgage or something like that, or maybe he's renting a place or something, excuse me, and the mortgage payment or the rent, the deal is that you have to pay the rent for a certain account or something like that, and he's got no access to banking services, that means he can't rent. That means he can't pay his mortgage, so his mortgage will be called in and so on. So there are huge implications here for this, but this is very standard practice in that child support alimony sphere. Now, the other thing is, not only can the government just arbitrarily declare that Billy Bob's got paternity where he may not. They don't. Remember, the burden of proof is very, very low. They just have to have some woman who says, no, Billy Bob Smith's the guy, and that's it. He now, the 100% burden of proof is now on him to prove he's not, and every obstacle will be put in his way to prevent him proving that. And the more likely it is that he's not the one, the more obstacles they'll put in his way, because he's a higher income earner. The other guys have got no. I've sort of seen cases where the guy hasn't got a nickel to his name. They're quite happy to hear his paternity claim, because it then they can clear him out the way and go after someone who has got money or has got a well-paying job. So they're more than interested. The ideological system is more than interested in clearing out somebody who's obviously got no. But now, if the paternity is proved to the guy who's got no job, then everyone seems to be gloomy and upset. The preference is for a white middle class guy in a good job, so they can really cream the guy through the and take shitloads of money from him. But anyway, there's various sort of methods here. So say Billy Bob's paying, for example, $1,000 a month in child support. Well, they can arbitrarily determine, look, Billy Bob's actually capable. We don't have to prove it. We can say Billy Bob is capable of making a higher income if he wants to, and he's not. So what we'll do is we'll just adjust his child support or his alimony upwards so he pays more, and on the basis that we think he could earn more if he really wanted to do it. So we can just arbitrarily do that. Now, if Billy Bob doesn't like it, he can take it to court. Again, 3 or 4 year waiting list to get that heard into court. But on the other side, if they want to take someone to court to get money from them in this sort of ideological court, then they can do that in seconds flat. But if somebody who wants to try and oppose it, then every obstacle is going to be put in their way. So really, there's a this idea of banking services being denied is very commonplace, or being inoperable in effect is extremely commonplace to people who are being targeted by child support and alimony collection agencies. And given that there is in their interest to place many triggers in place, so that looking sideways on a Sunday is enough to trigger some sort of refusal to comply with orders and so on, then that allows them then to go after these people with maximum aggression, even though they're the burden of proof they need to meet for this. No, we sent you a letter. No, that letter didn't come back, so no, you're Hitler. The gap between a letter going out and the supposed payer being Hitler is there's nothing in it. You're instantly Hitler, and you have no legal rights. And are you again? It's down to, we're just protecting children here, little girls dressed in pink. That's what we're doing. And if you've got a problem with that, you damn fucking Nazi. So it's this banking service is being denied or made inoperable has been around for a long time, and certainly in the 1990s in particular, or late 80s and into the 90s, they really amped it up big time. Western governments all across the world amped it up big time in order to make sure there was no escape for somebody who had these orders against them, to make it much easier to engage in aggressive collection action and so on. And don't sell these guys short. I've known people where they're getting threats and harassing phone calls, people running around trying to serve summonses on them, and it's a daily event. And I defy anybody to be able to withstand that much harassment, constant harassment, taxpayer funded, government directed, purposeful, extra legal, ideological harassment of a private citizen who's committed no crime, by the way. And defy. And I've seen sort of people go in court. I remember one guy, ashen faced, who's in court, and then his bank account had been cleaned out because some woman somewhere had said he was the father, or the paternity was his. And so I watched him in court. I was sitting in the observer gallery as this guy came in, and he said, I don't know this one. I've never been to that city. Why would? And the judge just didn't care. She's named you. That's it. That is fact. You're it, and you have to now prove that you're not. And he quite reasonably said, well, why doesn't she have to prove that I am? No. When children, we're protecting children here, and the mere fact you're questioning that makes you a damn Nazi. And so the guy has to pay until he can prove his non-paternity. So he asked for a DNA test, and the judge says straight away, well, only if she agrees. Now, he's a well-paid guy with a very stable long-term employment history, so he's a cash cow for her for years to come. So she's got no interest at all in having a DNA test. He might not be the one, probably isn't. So that means the money stops as soon as the DNA test proves he's not, and so on. So no one's got any interest in actually dealing with facts or evidence here. It's all ideological, which indeed it is with, I would assert, with Nigel Farage. Ideologically, he's opposed to the European Union and its overreach, and he's opposed to the globalisation project, or questions many facets of it. So they want to neutralise him in the same way they want to neutralise Trump. And that's what it's all about. But I just want to make it very clear: this idea of depersoning people and denying them banking services, that's been around for a long time. And wherever you see ideology prevailing, with no burden of proof on the state, you will see this depersoning going on, and I think it's going to get worse. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.